Welcome to my channel. Subscribe to this channel. New stories every day. Let's get started. A doggone reunion. I met Helen during our junior year at the University of Michigan. She was dating some guy from the football team. Brad or Chad, something stereotypical like that. One night at a campus party, I challenged him to a game of darts, wagering not money, but a dance with his girlfriend. Fueled by overconfidence and cheap beer, he agreed. Let's just say my hand was steadier than his. And by the end of the night, Helen and I were sharing more than just a dance. Fast forward a few years, and we were happily married. We bought a cozy house in a suburban neighborhood with a picket fence and a small garden where Helen grew tomatoes that never seemed to turn red. To complete our little family, we adopted a dachshund named Oscar, because who doesn't name their dachshund Oscar? Life was good. I worked as a software engineer, putting in long hours to build a comfortable future for us. Helen was a freelance graphic designer, working from home, and taking Oscar on more walks than he probably wanted. We talked about having kids someday, once things settled down. One morning over breakfast, Helen looked up from her coffee. Guess what? The college is hosting a 10-year reunion next month. I glanced up from my tablet. Already? Time flies when you're avoiding student loan collectors. She laughed. Should we go? It might be fun to see old friends. Sure, I shrugged. Maybe I can gloat to Brad or Chad about stealing his girlfriend. She smirked. His name was Blake, and I think he's a personal trainer now. Even better, I grinned. I can show off my dad bod. As the reunion approached, a major project landed on my desk. I don't think I can make it, I told Helen apologetically. We're on a tight deadline. Her face fell for a moment before she forced a smile. That's okay. I can go and represent the family. Besides, someone has to tell everyone how important you've become. Just don't forget to mention my impressive collection of Star Wars memorabilia, I joked. The night before the reunion, I helped her pick out a dress. You sure you don't mind me going alone? She asked. Of course not, I kissed her forehead. Go have fun. Just don't let Blake bench press you. She rolled her eyes. Please, like I'd be impressed by that. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The weekend passed in a blur of code and coffee. Oscar looked at me accusingly whenever I forgot to feed him on time, which was often. On Sunday evening, Helen returned home, looking tired but happy. How was it? I asked, taking her suitcase. It was great, she said, a little too enthusiastically. Caught up with a lot of people. Did you see Blake? She hesitated. Yeah, he was there. Did he try and arm wrestle you? She laughed nervously. No, nothing like that. Over the next few days, I noticed Helen seemed distant. She spent more time on her phone, texting with someone who made her smile subtly at the screen. Oscar, ever the traitor, seemed to be her new confidant. One afternoon, I received a message on Facebook from an old college acquaintance, Mark. We hadn't spoken in years. Hey man, the message read, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I thought you should know. At the reunion, Helen was hanging out with Blake a lot. They seemed pretty cozy. Attached were a few photos. Helen and Blake laughing together, their heads closed. The two of them walking outside, away from the crowd. A blurry shot that might have been them entering a car together. My stomach dropped. Before I could process it, more messages came in. From Lisa, another college friend, and even from people whose names I barely remembered. Looks like Helen and Blake rekindled something. Sorry to tell you this, but your wife was with Blake all night. It felt less like concern and more like schadenfreude, like they were enjoying the opportunity to knock me down a peg. When Helen came home that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table, Oscar at my feet. Hey, she said cautiously. Everything okay? I looked up, holding my phone. I got some interesting messages today. Her eyes flickered with panic. What you mean? People from college. They said you and Blake spent a lot of time together at the reunion. She set down her bag. We talked a bit, caught up, that's all. Is that why you were sneaking off alone? Going for late-night drives? Her face paled. Who told you that? Does it matter? Is it true? She sat down across from me, tears welling in her eyes. It's not what you think. Then what is it, Helen? Because it looks like you had a little trip down memory lane with your ex. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. We just talked. I was feeling nostalgic, and maybe I had a bit too much wine. But nothing happened. Do you expect me to believe that? Yes, Because it's the truth, she pleaded. I would never hurt you like that. I stood up, pushing the chair back. Oscar scampered away, sensing the tension. You already did. Whether or not something physical happened, you lied to me. You spent the entire reunion with another man, your ex-boyfriend, no less, and didn't think to mention it. She wiped her cheeks. I didn't want to upset you over nothing. Well, congratulations, I'm upset. She looked at me, desperation in her eyes. Please, can we just talk about this? Go to counseling or something? I shook my head. I don't think so. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Her mouth dropped open. A lawyer? You're divorcing me. What did you expect, Helen? That had just shrugged this off. It was a mistake. A stupid, meaningless mistake. I sighed heavily. Maybe it was, but I can't trust you anymore. She broke down into sobs, but I felt strangely numb. No anger, no sadness, just emptiness. I'm staying at a hotel tonight, I said quietly. I'll come by tomorrow to pick up some things. She didn't respond as I grabbed my keys and walked out. Over the next few weeks, I moved into a small apartment downtown. Oscar stayed with Helen. I figured she needed him more than I did. The divorce proceedings were swift. We had no children, and the house was easily sold. Helen tried reaching out several times, leaving voicemails and sending long emails that I didn't read. One afternoon, I bumped into Mark at a coffee shop. Hey man, he said awkwardly. How are you holding up? I'm fine, I replied, stirring sugar into my coffee. Listen, about those messages. I hope you know I was just looking out for you. I glanced at him. Were you? He shifted uncomfortably. Well, yeah, no one wants to be the guy who doesn't know his wife's cheating on him. Right, and it had nothing to do with you trying to stir up drama. He raised his hands defensively. Hey, don't shoot the messenger. I took a sip of my coffee. You know, Mark, it's funny. We haven't talked in years, but you felt compelled to enlighten me. He shrugged. I thought you'd want to know. Thanks, I said flatly, standing up to leave. Consider me enlightened. As I walked out, I couldn't shake the feeling that the reunion had been less about reconnecting and more about rehashing old rivalries. One evening, as I settled into my new place, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Helen standing there, Oscar on a leash wagging his tail excitedly. Can we talk? She asked softly. I considered closing the door but stepped aside. Fine. She looked around the sparsely furnished apartment. You've redecorated. It's a rental, I replied curtly. Oscar trotted in, sniffing everything before settling at my feet. Traitor. I miss you, she said, her eyes searching mine. I crossed my arms. What do you want, Helen? I want us to try again. To fix this. I shook my head. I don't think that's a good idea. She took a deep breath. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. But I realize now that I was chasing a feeling, a stupid, fleeting feeling of youth or excitement. But it meant nothing. Meant enough to throw away our marriage, I retorted. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. I looked down at Oscar, who was gnawing on my shoelace. I think it's too late for that. Why? Don't you love me anymore? I met her gaze. I did. But now, I think we both need to move on. She wiped a tear from her cheek. I guess I deserve that. Maybe we both deserve a fresh start. She nodded slowly, picking up Oscar's leash. I'll let you get back to your evening. As she turned to leave, I felt a pang of sadness, but also relief. Take care of yourself, Helen. She paused at the door. You too. After she left, I sat down on the couch, the silence of the apartment enveloping me. I didn't feel anger or bitterness, just a sense of closure. A few months later, I attended a friend's birthday party at a local bar. I was chatting with some colleagues when a woman approached our group. Mind if I join you? She asked with a warm smile. Not at all, I replied, pulling out a chair for her. She introduced herself as Lisa, a different Lisa than the one from college. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our mutual disdain for karaoke and love of sci-fi novels. So what brings you here tonight? She asked, sipping her drink. Just celebrating a friend's birthday, I said. And you? Same. Though I'm starting to think I was invited as a buffer for all the couples here. I laughed. I know the feeling. As the night progressed, we found ourselves engrossed in conversation, oblivious to the dwindling crowd around us. Can I ask you something? She said, twirling her straw. Sure. Why does a guy like you seem so, I don't know, guarded? I raised an eyebrow. Do I seem guarded? A little, she smiled gently, but in a mysterious, intriguing way. I considered her question. Let's just say I've had some recent life changes. Haven't we all? She sighed. But you know, sometimes change is good. It opens doors you didn't know were there. Maybe you're right. She glanced at her watch. Well, it's getting late, but I'd love to continue this conversation sometime. I smiled. I'd like that. We exchanged numbers, and as she walked away, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Excitement. Over the next few weeks, Lisa and I started dating. It was refreshing to be with someone new, someone without the baggage of past mistakes and lingering doubts. One afternoon, as we strolled through the park, she asked, "So tell me about this infamous Dachshund I've heard so much about." I chuckled. "Oscar. He's a character. Thinks he's a Great Dane trapped in a small body. Sounds like someone I'd like to meet." "Maybe you will," I said, taking her hand. As we walked, I realized that I wasn't just moving on. I was genuinely happy. The past felt like a closed chapter, and the future was an open book. Back at work, my colleague Dan popped his head into my office. "Hey, a few of us are grabbing drinks after work. You in?" "Sure," I replied. "Count me in." As we sat at the bar later that evening, Dan clinked his glass against mine. "You seem different lately, in a good way." "How so?" "More relaxed. Happier. Did you switch to decaf, or something?" I laughed. "Nah, just making some positive changes." "Good for you," he said, taking a sip of his beer. "Life's too short to be stuck in the past. Ain't that the truth?" One day, I received an email from Helen. It was brief, a simple apology, and a hope that I was doing well. I stared at the screen for a moment before hitting reply. "Hi Helen. Thanks for reaching out. I hope you're doing well too. Take care. Mike." I sent the email and closed my laptop, feeling a sense of finality. Epilogue. Life has a funny way of working out. What started as a painful experience became a catalyst for growth. I'm now in a relationship with someone who makes me laugh, challenges me, and shares my interests. Oscar splits his time between me and Helen. Joint custody of a Dachshund wasn't something I'd anticipated, but it works out. He's still convinced he's the biggest dog on block. As for Helen, I heard she's moved to Chicago for a fresh start. I wish her the best. Looking back, I realized that sometimes people come into your life for a season, and that's okay. Not every relationship is meant to last forever, and not every ending is a tragedy. I don't harbor any ill will. In fact, I'm grateful. Grateful for the lessons learned, the experiences shared, and the opportunities that followed. So here's to new beginnings, unexpected friendships, and the twists and turns that make life interesting. And if you ever find yourself at a college reunion, maybe skip the late-night drives with exes. Just a thought. Reader comments. Saraj. Love this story. Sometimes moving on is the best thing you could do. Alexby. Joint custody of a Dachshund. Now that's a sitcom waiting to happen. Mariak. I'm glad the protagonist found happiness. Life's too short to dwell on the past. Joined. Great mix of humor and sincerity. The dialogue felt real and engaging. Lism. Wait, is this Lisa character based on me? Just kidding. Great story.